The whistle of firecrackers caught your ear over the tranquil waters that surrounded the harbour, lighting up the sky momentarily with a crackle before they died again and again. Liyue Harbour was festive this time of year, and for what the voyage had been out at sea, it was a welcoming sight. Whoa! The lights twinkled against the waters before the large ship docked at port, with the sound of sailors calling and shouting to others on land. You swung across the masts, sliding down the ropes that cascaded the sails until you nimbly landed onto the deck, joining the rest of the crew while they hollered to everyone at port. You joined in, waving at bystanders with a grin. Soon after, once the captain had disembarked off the ship, you followed suit along with the others, eyeing the inner glow of the city and smelling the delicacies that brewed and stewed throughout the vendors. However, your pleasantries were short-lived when something caught your eye in the shadows, rushing past quickly. No one else had noticed while you eyed the crowd. Then again, the life of a lookout at the crow's nest gave you quicker reactions to the smallest of things. You took off after the figure, spotting their fleeting shadow with every turn, whether through the crowds or the streets, catching them by their coattails, or whatever was flapping behind them. It felt like they were slowing, as if allowing you to catch up to them. But you ran further away from the crowd of street-goers, ready to watch the spectacle unfold. The figure made one last turn towards the dying light of the sunset, only for you to turn and find nobody. You were met by the bright sunset that cascaded its rays across the ocean ahead, the orange and pink hues reflecting calmly along the surface of the harbour's waters. It caught your awe and whimsy while you walked towards the edge of the wooden fences that lined the cliffside, until a hand pulled you back into the shadows, pushing you into the brick wall of the house beside you. He immediately hushed you, his hand over your mouth, while his steely golden gaze glowed against the evening light. His eyes stared into yours, a silent agreement in between, before he released you from his hold, but still kept you against the brick wall, trapping you within his arms.
"I knew it!"
You loudly whispered. "Quiet," he interrupted harshly, his eyes looking out towards the street.
"I missed you too, Xiao."
He grimaced at your comment, turning his attention onto you with the confidence that the both of you were secluded from the crowds of Liyue. "You're late."
"Blame the wind and the sea. And maybe my captain while you're at it."
You jested with a smile.
"But I made it to port in one piece. I think I meet the requirements."
Your eyes drew towards his hypnotic golden stare. Xiao was a man of very little words, but that did not deter you from befriending him every time you docked at Liyue. He was like a cat, slow to trust, but once earned had the tolerance to stand the company. Some of the time. Patience was a virtue, and for Xiao, it was an Archon given right. You soon realized that despite the brilliance of his eyes, he wore extremely dull-looking clothes, noticing his attire while inside his embrace against the wall.
"Just what are you wearing?"
You questioned, eyeing the dark, almost black clothes on his person. "You don't like it?" he asked seriously.
No, it's just not you."
It was a gift. Something called a suit. I've never seen garments like this before. Sure enough, it was a strange outfit, It was simple, almost robe-like despite its cut and length.
Maybe from a traveler?
You asked inquisitively.
I've never seen that kind of cloth before either. Not from the other lands of Tevat, at least.
Well, I thought to try it out.
He explained, cutting the discussion short.
Try something different.
That almost harsh tone in his voice was his usual self, but there was a glimpse of something else while his elbow leaned against the wall, closely hovering his head above yours. It had been a full moon cycle at best since you had last seen him, finding that the longer you were away from port, the more fervent he was to see you. In his own way. Yet the more muted clothes, the stranger they were, differed from his more colourful display.
Is it because I spoke about Venti that one time?
You asked, curious of his behaviour.
What?
About how bright and youthful he was when I met up with him at port? You seemed a bit iffy about the topic.
No. I simply wanted to try something different.
He interrupted with his calm and authoritative tone.
And this is the first time I'm trying it.
You couldn't contain your smile while you turned up at the man, chuckling under your breath.
Well, it suits you, I guess.
That frown of his was still present, yet he scoffed under his breath while his body closed in on yours. Leaning on the wall behind you, he entrapped you within his hold, turning to face the now dimly lit sky that had grown dark before the fireworks blasted into the sky. The lights were filled with a myriad of colour, spraying across the harbour while the distant cheer of the crowd watched on. You smiled at the sight, your eyes alight from the display, without realizing Xiao's gaze on you. He watched your light brighten from the smile you held, his guilt overwhelming his decisions so far. Xiao was still bound to his oath and purpose despite being a free man, or so he assumed to be. Life was a precious commodity in the words and guise of Li Wei's Archon, if anything. But that light was rare, and far and few between to emerge from the inky dark he consumed time and time again. His eyes stared between the fibers of your hair and the movements you made, no matter the slightest they were, while you watched the fireworks in awe. He hoped you weren't boarding for another port during this festive time. His head soon leaned into yours, nuzzling into the back of your head while you stopped. You felt his breath cascade down your neck, steady, like him.
Please stay for the lantern rite,
he asked in a whisper while the fireworks still exploded in the sky.
Don't take another trip. At least stay for this. I won't ask any more than that, Spark.
Your spine crawled from the closeness of his body to yours, his breath on you, his head on yours. It tingled a little, feeling something warm spread over your neck and your cheeks, a warmth that combated even the chilliest of nights out at sea. You turned to face him, your hand gently grabbing hold of his, encompassing his palm into your warm ones.
I wouldn't miss it for Tevat.
You smiled warmly.
No jobs until the morning after. Promise.
You raised your pinky up to Xiao, spotting his slight confusion at the gesture until you directed his hand to yours, linking his pinky. Xiao stared at his pinky, slightly off-put by it. Was this another oath he found himself in?
Oh, it's just a promise.
You reassured him, eyeing his confused expression.
My promise to you.
Xiao stared between your pinky and your smile, soon relaxing from his thoughts before he nodded solemnly. He directed you towards the rails that overlooked the harbour from this quiet solitude. You both leaned against the rails, staring off into the now star-lit sky, decorated by fleeting sparks of colour. You enjoyed these quiet moments with him. This lantern rite was the calm you needed after the stormy sea. Thank you for tuning in to another fanfiction reading. If you enjoy what I do or would just prefer to fall asleep to my voice, please hit the like button, ring that bell, and subscribe to my channel. Well, there's another 7 minutes in heaven, part of the compilation here, and I have started to get into the Genshin Impact fandom, I believe. I hope I did Xiao some justice, at the very least. I mean, he is a bit of a broody man, so it took a while for me to try to get into it, but hopefully this should suffice. I hope you all enjoyed, and I hope to make more Genshin Impacts very soon. Otherwise though, thank you so much for visiting. I hope to hear from you soon, next we meet.